like animal farm. Justice mean inequity. So who go say the truth? Who go say the truth? Christian cancer, silence. Islamic leaders, silence. Kings and queens, silence. Traditional leaders, silence. So who go say the truth? We are them go get so confused the call. Now by area why no better. We are them go get so confused the call. One guy's area why no better. Who go say the truth? Who go say the truth? Oh, you need it now, see what's at this one. Now your friend on an iron come at them. Only papi obeka nice and beer. So I won't bet you at two. Everybody was afraid. And until I to my cottage again, once my boy dumping one and I but who go tell the truth? Nanai or say me. Nanso bien person beka wasam because everybody is afraid. Anya safwe muayini. Akuku drofo nyina dalima. Who go say the truth? Obiaja konson so to grow your mansa to me be a cacobrafo. If I need a if when you know yet. Na so kutrata down so be dia back or why no keke. I fene for be man mo pia for efwe. No cross on my mo. Anya safwe mo ayini. Akuku drofo nyina dalima. Who go say the truth? Abaya di bote chino. Yedi bi bebo nyande bi. Kachisa would your mouth pipinuma. Would your mind never shine my preference? But who go tell the truth? TUC, silence. Even journalists, silence. So then who go say the truth? Right is right. Wrong is wrong, no matter how you justify. You say you wanna get rid of corruption. Someone want to help you, now the person become your target. Jobless, no they mean senseless. Poverty, no they mean useless. One day, them go resist.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to Today Ghana News TV. You are here live on MyView show, as I said, on Today Ghana News TV, and we are also broadcasting on Sakina Information Center in Tatali in Northern Ghana. We are also live on High FM 93.7 in Achuihima in the Eastern region, and also on the King's Radio in Accra, as well as OT TV in Jasikai, and other media-friendly stations across Ghana and all over the world, and also on all social media platforms as MyView show live on Today Ghana News TV, where every weekend, not every weekend I say, but every Monday, we do well to bring you very topical socio-political discussions to enrich ourselves and to nourish ourselves on events that are happening around us in Ghana and in most parts of the world. Now, this evening, we bring you a special edition of the show. I call it a special edition, not necessarily because the other editions have not been special. Of course, you know, on this show, what we do. is to bring you, our viewers and our listeners, the best of what it is to offer. But I call it special because this evening show we are dedicating to AU Day. AU Day, for our viewers and listeners, you may be pardoned if you have forgotten that AU Day has come and gone. As a matter of fact, yesterday, the 25th of May, was AU Day, and unlike previous years where AU Day was designated as a public holiday in Ghana, this year it is not. But that is not to say that the day is not being commemorated. It was commemorated in many ways, and here on this show, we are also dedicating this evening's show to the day and commemorating it as such. And how are we doing that? We are doing that by exploring things that are happening beyond the borders of Ghana and looking at things that are happening in other African countries, specifically things that are happening on the West African sub-region, particularly as they may relate to the rest of Africa and to Ghana, as the case may be. So that is why today we are going to be looking at the political leadership situation in Burkina Faso and its influence on the African continent. Well, one may ask, why are we interested in things that are happening in other African countries and in Burkina Faso or neighboring West African countries? There are several reasons why we are interested and why we should be interested. First of all, as we may all know, we Africans are basically one and the same. Our ethnicity, our tribal lineage cut across national borders, and there are a majority of us that are in multiple countries. So Pan-Africanism is only a natural phenomenon that should happen in Africa. But that is just one. If one was to look at it from the economic perspective, I'm sure you are sitting in Ghana and you know very well that the tomatoes that probably you bought, the onions that you bought, or probably even the willy that you bought in your wachi, or the beef that you bought from your local market, you may be aware that these are imports, things that we import from Burkina Faso and other Sahelian countries. So these are a few reasons why we ought to be interested in the affairs in the things that are happening in other countries, and in this case, in Burkina Faso and other Sahelian countries. And as we always do on this show, we always bring you people who are knowledgeable in the field, people who are well armed and educated on the matters to bring light to the issues that are being discussed so that we can have holistic education on the topics that are being discussed. To that extent, this evening, we are being joined by none other than Mr. Fidel Amachi Owusu. Mr. Owusu is the CEO of DevSec Analytic Africa Limited, which is a security and risk consultancy. And he's going to join us today, and he's going to help educate us and enlighten us, give us things from his knowledge perspective on the security situation and the leadership situation in Burkina Faso as it is currently, and how that may impact on not just Ghana, but the rest of Africa. Mr. Osu, good evening to you.
Good evening, sir. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to MyView show on Today Ghana News TV. Well, before we start, we know you are doing well. We know you work with, you are the CEO of a consultancy company. Can you give us a little bit of education and background on your organization and the things that you can tell us about your organization, especially that you deal with security matters? What's your organization about?
So thank you very much. DevSec Analytics Africa was established and is registered in Ghana and was established a couple of years ago. to look at the geopolitics in Africa, risk management, and security analysis. So if you are a company from outside Africa or within Africa, maybe you are in Nigeria, you would like to have a subsidiary or a branch in Mali, but you want to know how safe your business will be. I mean, if which city, maybe you want to locate, you want to be located in Gao, so in central Mali. So DevSec will do all the security analysis, tell you about the risk of extremism, of banditry, of jihadism, and other things that could affect you, and even rebellion in northern Mali that could affect you, and how you may not also be so much at risk. Because sometimes when we look at the headlines, we are likely to exaggerate certain issues. DevSec goes down and it gives you the reality on the ground. Okay. Again, we also look at the geopolitical forecast. For instance, you want to know about the Great Lakes region of Africa, where we have the DRC, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, and others. We will give you all that you need to know about the region and give you forecasts. Like, I mean, what is likely to happen in the region in terms of resources, in terms of wars, in terms of bilateral relations, multilateral relations, and things like that. Horn of Africa, all the 6 geopolitical zones in Africa, we handle it with our on-the-ground associates and other supporting staff who work on and off. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. So basically, it appears you have a footprint on the African continent. At the top of your head, are you able to tell us roughly how many countries you have operated in over the years?
Well, it's more than 2 dozens because we are talking about Burkina Faso. We've done work on Burkina Faso, West Africa. Just a few countries that we've not reported on. We've done Guinea-Bissau, we've done Cote d'Ivoire, Togo, Nigeria, Senegal. In fact, when this ruling party in Senegal was struggling in the woods and were being members of the party and its supporters were being beaten by the Macky Sall regime, we were reporting on that for organizations that wanted to know about the future. And we had a lot of things right over there. In Gabon, days before the coup occurred in Gabon, we wrote a report that there was likely to be a coup in Gabon. And a few days, about 3 days after we saw that, we predicted Niger, that it was a fragile state at the time when many people thought that because of the presence of US forces and other forces in Niger, they were not going to be affected so immediately. But it happened because we don't ignore any factor in our analysis, the ethnic factors. And in Niger, for instance, we use the ethnic factor that way. The president was from a minority group, and looking at the string of coups happening across the Sahel, the majority ethnicity in the security sector would like to undo or would like to remove him from office because they've tried before and they failed. And that was the time, and it happened. So we've done a lot of reports. We've done Horn of Africa, so we are talking about Somalia, Ethiopia. I mean, so many. And recently, if you observed on Al Jazeera, we were interviewed to give our analysis on the DRC and Sudan. And these are all countries that we reported. This afternoon, we reported on about 4 countries, and we gave a summary on our wall on LinkedIn. And we deal with professionals and other organizations like NGOs that are working in these areas, and we give them reports as and when these are requested. Yeah.
Okay, so now we know the organization. Yes. How about a man? How did you get to this point where you have like what have you been into? What have you been doing that have put you in this situation where you are doing this this work that you are doing all across Africa?
Mm-hmm. Now, this as a child, I've been so much interested in geopolitics as a child, and all my mates will tell you. In fact, some of my mates, come to my inbox and tell me, "We are not surprised you are doing this," because and interestingly, in SHS, I did business, okay, and I didn't do general arts. But the interesting thing is that the same year that I completed my WASI, I registered for arts privately. I didn't attend any classes, but I registered for geography, government, economics, and history. And I wrote it myself. I sat at home for 3 months and wrote it myself, and I did well in that. And that was actually what I used in proceeding to the University of Ghana, Legon, to read political science. So that has been my interest. I love maps. Currently, when you give me any country in Africa and where it is located and its neighbors, I can just say it off head. And it's something I've been doing for a long time, So after my first degree, I did my master's in international affairs and diplomacy at LESIAD, Legon Center for International Affairs and Diplomacy. And then I've pursued other academic programs. Recently, I finished Sustainable Humanitarian Action Masters in Spain, UCAM. And I've also been a non-resident fellow with the Joint Special Operations University, Tampa, Florida, the United States Special Operations University. I did a program with them. I think I finished there last year. And other courses and programs, and I've given lectures. Not long ago, last year, I did one with the U.S. Army War College in Pennsylvania. Yes, I lectured officers from the ranks of colonel and lieutenant colonel and above, and a whole lot. I can't remember. I mean, the podcast, the lectures, tens of them, and it's been good. It's been good. And so in 2023, we decided to put this organization together in order to have young enthusiasts and other people who are interested in security and geopolitics come on board, and then together we work and make some money, so to speak. Yes.
Well, I mean, if our viewers and listeners were left in doubt as to the credentials of the person that we are having today to discuss the matter, or what qualifies a person to speak on the matters that we are discussing today, you have heard from the man, you have heard from the organization, and when we marry these two together, I'm sure that we will be left in no doubt that today's discussion is better had with none other than Mr. Owusu for this show. And that is why I always say that we bring you the people who are most knowledgeable to discuss the matters at hand. So
before I forget this, yes, because it's very important. I've also had experience with politics at a governmental level. Just after my national service, I had opportunity to work as a research assistant at the office of the vice president at the time, His Excellency Emisatha, and at the time the current president was president. And I became research assistant and got promoted to be personal assistant. And later, when he left office and the government wanted to appoint a special assistant to take care of him and manage his office as a former vice president, he submitted my name to the erstwhile Kufuor government, and then I was appointed as a special assistant until he unfortunately passed in 2018. I was his special assistant. So I've also had some government experience in government, and work with people, consequential decision makers. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I mean, his passing was a collective loss to the nation, but having worked closely with a man, I'm sure it must have been a personal loss to you as well.
Of course.
Our condolences to you and to the immediate family. It's been it's been quite a loss, and as we move on, we pray that he find a peaceful rest with his creator. Yes. Amen. So, Mr. Owusu, we introduced today's show as a special edition, especially as it relates to the AU Day, which was yesterday, the 25th of May. With your background and the work that you have done so far over the years, what would you say is the relevance of an organization such as the EU in the political and governance architecture of Africa?
Mm, mm, mm. Interestingly, before the Rome Treaty that laid the foundation of the European Union,
Mm,
African Union was already conceived. And how it was going to look like was already written on by none other than our first Prime Minister and first President, His Excellency Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Now, the issue was this. This was a continent that was overwhelmingly dominated by foreign powers for centuries. In fact, it was the latter part of the 19th century that colonialism formally got implemented. However, before that, these countries were, exchanging forts and castles without the consent of the locals. They were dominating the people, importing European laws that had nothing to do with Africans. So, Nkrumah, having studied in the United States and observed the US system, knowing that the US was also a colony or under the British, and were in 1776 able to come out of the British colonial entanglement. He learned a lot from the United States. And then when he came back, he thought that, well, if African independence, and this happened especially after the Second World War, that if African independence was supposed to be consequential and meaningful, then we needed to unite. And so he was advocating for one currency, one flag, one military high command, one markets, one government, one foreign policy. We should have a single foreign policy as a continent. And he was willing to sacrifice. He single-handedly supported many countries in the independence struggle. Guinea was one of them, the famous 10 million pounds that he gave to Guinea after France heinously and notoriously decided to punish Guinea for pursuing independence outside the French community. Nkrumah stepped in and supported Guinea. And that was how come later, when he was removed, he became a co-president of that country. So this was conceived before the Rome Treaty that gave birth to the EU. However, in 1963, Nkrumah was disappointed. In fact, 1963 was the birth of the OAU that later became AU. And at the time, Nkrumah's argument was seen to be more radical. So the opponent, or people who were the so-called gradualists, actually won the day by forming a loose organization where sovereignty still resided with individual weak countries. And therefore, the organization became more of a forum of African states rather than a unified body that was supposed to fight for the collective interest of Africans. So that was the birth of the AU or the OAU. And so that is where we have come from. But your question was more on its relevance. Yes, despite all the challenges and the disappointment that came with people like Kwame Nkrumah upon the formation of the OAU, it has done something. At least Africans have had a place, Addis Ababa, where they always go there and think. And we believe that with time, things will get better because the AU became more closer than the OAU. And over time, they've settled some disputes, especially the war between Chad and Libya in those days. They've engaged in some peace agreements and mediations that have resulted in some stability in some parts of the country, of the continent. And so I believe that the AU is worth it. I mean, we are trying to be better, but we still have a lot of things to do. Thank you.
Well, talking about a lot of things to do. One thing that unfortunately has plagued a lot of West African countries in particular since independence have been the issue of instability. And the country of topic today, Burkina Faso, has had this checkered history with instability throughout its political history, especially after independence up until today. So that we lay the foundation to where we are today. Can you tell us a little bit about the situation in Burkina Faso post-independence and how we are, how come we are, or where we are today? Not how come we get there, because we'll get into the meat of it, but where we are today with the political situation.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Colonial influence really shaped what Burkina Faso has become today. Now, when the French, in terms of colonialism, were people who were territory hungry. So if you look at the partitioning of Africa in the 1884-1885 Berlin Conference, you realize that France focused so much on territory rather than, let's say, resources, because it was a country that was, I mean, as I said, territory conscious. Now, the thing is that with that, it meant that many parts of West Africa, especially, was given to France. And which means that France needed to also partition what it had gotten from the partitioning. This is to say that France had to differentiate between territories that were more beneficial and more important from those that it didn't see to be too relevant. So the colony of Senegal and its city-states were seen as very important. So if you were in St. Louis in Senegal, you were in Dakar and other two communes, you were classified as more important than someone living in, let's say, Bamako or Ouagadougou in those days. Because the French made sure that those interior territories in present-day Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger were seen as labor reserve territories. So it means that they use those places to work the factories, or not factories per se, but the economies of coastal communities. So Cote d'Ivoire was seen to be more important than Burkina Faso, at that time known as Upper Volta. And which meant that labor, the investment in education, social infrastructure were lagging because they needed the individuals. And you know, Burkinabe is very tall, strong people. You find the same people in Mali, Niger. And these populations were used as labor reserve. And in fact, they could work by forced labor. The French made laws that made people in this territory deliver free labor without payment, forced labor and things like that. And so that was the structure. So at independence, these colonies were woefully underdeveloped. If you compare that, in fact, Senegal itself was underdeveloped, Cote d'Ivoire was underdeveloped, but the colonies, these interior colonies, were more underdeveloped. I mean, it was, if someone was moving from Burkina Faso to Cote d'Ivoire, he was actually seen to be moving towards civilization, so to speak. And people moving from Mali to Dakar were seen to be moving towards civilization, because they could not be citizens of France. But if you were living in Dakar and you spoke French, behaved like French, then you were likely to be considered a citizen. And that was how come Houphouët-Boigny and Senghor, who were the pioneer independence struggle leaders of Senegal, of Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal respectively, were members of parliament of the French parliament. These were members of parliament and citizens of French parliament at independence. So when Houphouët-Boigny was trying to be president of Cote d'Ivoire, he was still a parliamentarian in France. But then those in Burkina Faso did not have that right to be citizens. And independence leaders of these colonies, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, were seen as more of second-level politicians. And that was how come those from the coastal communities or coastal colonies had so much influence on these countries. And that affected how independence unraveled. After post-independence, it affected them. And there's something I would like to stress. I wrote this about 2-3 years ago, but I would like to explain. Now, at the time of independence, France had come out of the struggles of the Second World War.
Okay.
France was really battered during the Second World War by Adolf Hitler. And so Charles de Gaulle, who was the leader of the Free French movement, was actually exiled in London and fighting for the liberation of France, because he could not say that Paris was under the Germans until the Germans lost the war before Charles de Gaulle came back. After a short while, he was put on the back burner in terms of the political struggle. And so France implemented what we call the Fourth Republican Constitution of France. That constitution was so much of a disaster that France could have several prime ministers within a few weeks, of several leaders within a few weeks, because the structure of the constitution was so weak. So Charles de Gaulle stepped in as a former general, and when he stepped in, he created a new constitution, which is the Fifth Republican Constitution, the constitution currently used by France. Now, that constitution was meant to create a strong man who was unquestionable. I mean, you could not question his authority. So Charles de Gaulle became the most powerful Western leader. I'm trying to build a point. Now, it was during this same time of Charles de Gaulle creating the Fifth Republican Constitution that the French decided to grant some arranged independence to their colonies. So, if you see former colonies of France in Africa, they copied the French Fifth Republican Constitution hook, line, sinker. They copied everything, like carbon paper. They took term limits. They took terms, presidential terms that had no limits. So Kofi Boyen did not have term limits. He ran till he died. Umar Bongo. Senghor was the only leader who voluntarily stepped down, but he didn't have term limits. Then I think that there was a Cameroon. Also, the leader stepped down for Paul Biya to step in, but Paul Biya has remained in office. And in fact, in his senile stage currently, he's going to run again. So it tells you what they copied from the French Constitution. But over time, metropolitan France changed that constitution because Charles de Gaulle himself resigned eventually. And that constitution, they realized that it gave so much power to Charles de Gaulle, so they weakened it. They weakened the powers of the president over time. But African leaders didn't change that when the French were changing it, because they benefited from that.
Okay.
And that continued. So it was so much so that in some Francophone countries, coup d'etats happened, like Burkina Faso,
okay,
Mali, and Niger. So coups were happening. Okay. In Senegal, it didn't happen. Senegal is one of the few countries one of the only 2 countries in West Africa that has not experienced a military rule. That's Senegal. Because Senghor voluntarily stepped down. So he by his action, he created a system where the military did not have appetite. I mean, he stepped down. So there was no need to actually go after him. And then we have Cape Verde, the island, archipelago of Cape Verde, where they've not also had military rule. But all the others have had it, all the others. And this situation led to where Burkina Faso is currently is. And over time, Burkina Faso had Sankara. I don't know if you have specific questions on Sankara, but then I thought that I was building the point on it. But if you have a specific question, I'll leave it here so you ask.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll get to Sankara, who is widely celebrated not only in Burkina Faso, but probably across the African continent. It's argued that in most post-independence, most African countries, or just few African countries, stumbled across that catalyst of leadership that stood their ground and probably were going to catapult these countries to the next stage. Talk about Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, talk about Patrice Lumumba of Congo, talk about Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, and many others. Fortunately or unfortunately, these people probably their leadership got curtailed along the line, and this well, to most people's mind, Traore will get to him proper, but Traore is being seen as the reincarnate of Thomas Sankara. So let's get there. Let's tie in how Thomas Sankara got into the political sphere in Burkina Faso and what he stands for in the political architecture of that country.
Thank you very much. I think that's a perfect question. So, Burkina Faso started with a civilian leader, independence leader, who was overthrown, and at the point, the coups were becoming many. So Sankara himself overthrew others who had also staged a coup, another military regime. But when Sankara came in, he came in with a different aura, different ideology. He was a young man, but who was very witty and understood what his people wanted. So many people have called him the Che Guevara of Africa. He did indigenous socialism. You see, when we talk of the left, where some of us belong, the thing is, there were leftists who were copying the Soviet Union. Well, what is in the Soviet Union, that's what we have to follow. There were leftists who were copying what was happening in China. And then we had original leftists. So those who were copying China were called the Maoists. And then those who were copying the Soviet Union were called the Leninists or the Stalinists. Because Lenin, and after Vladimir Lenin, and Stalin after a Stalinist after Joseph Stalin. Maoist under Mao Zedong, the leader of China. But in the case of Sankara, he was an original socialist. He was the socialist who understood his environment and wanted to implement without leaning on China or the Soviet Union. That was what made him unique. And that was what also made Che Guevara unique. He understood socialism and he wanted to, localize it. That's what made Che Guevara and Thomas Sankara stand out. Now, the issue is that when he came in, so he understood that, look, we need to feed. Food is important. Let's grow our own food. Let's not listen to what is coming from metropolitan France. So he was, and he was very defiant to the extent that he could go to Paris and tell them in the face that, look, we don't need you. And go to forums and talk. He did not boycott forums. He went and spoke. Eventually, he was assassinated, and we know that. And the assassination, which has become a controversial issue, but, well, someone has been jailed in absentia, and that was Blaise Compaoré, who used to be his compatriot and comrade in the fight, and who the story goes betrayed him and had him killed. And the regime that came after his overthrow, that is the overthrow of Blaise Compaoré, the civilian regime that came afterwards actually tried him in absentia and jailed him. So that is Sankara. Now, before you come in, Sankara and Blaise Compaoré, just like what we have in Ghana, the Kwame Nkrumah JB Dankwa dichotomy. In Burkina Faso, it is pro-Sankara, pro-Compaoré. That is the tradition in Burkina Faso. And anytime that pro-Sankaras are in office, there are pro-Compaorés willing to take them away, and vice versa. And this is something I've written a summary on and given timelines and dates as in how these things unfold. And I did this about 2 years ago. So this is the tradition in Burkina Faso, and that is where we currently stand. And I think the subsequent questions will let me explain how these things are playing out currently. Thank you.
All right. So from everything that we have, you've told us today, from the narrative that you've told us, it does appear that there is some very strong background of military intervention in Burkina Faso.
Yeah.
Now, to a lot of people, especially in the West, the argument is made that this is probably a reason for the probably the state or economic state of affairs in the country, because they argue that there are schools there's two schools of thought that democracy is the best form of governance, government for the people, government by the people, and of the people, and that with democratic governance, therein would come the fruits of or a dividends of democracy, which is the translation into economic prosperity in countries. However, there is also another school of thought that says that in some countries that there is a strong case for strongman leadership, be it military or whatever, and the arguments that are made. One of the arguments is that in lots of African countries where you have a lot of splits, as in various diversities, in be it ethnic diversity or tribal diversity, where there are so many diverse people of different shades, that it might be a little difficult to, if you like, go with democracy, in the sense that, it appears we have lost Mr. Fidel briefly, but once we have him back, the question that we are trying to, or what we're trying to find out is where. Okay, I think we probably lost you briefly.
Yes.
Okay. So here is the question. There are two schools of thought, and one school of thought is that in African countries, for instance, where the diversity in the populace is just a lot, that in fact that was one of the reasons given by the French for introducing the French countries, the French how do you call it, language in those countries. The fact that the diversity was so much such that even neighboring villages could not understand each other, and so it was necessary for them to introduce the French language to unify the people, kind of. So there is that argument that in such countries, that if you do not have strong leadership, that goes down to a strong man, like as in military regimes, that it's difficult to hold those countries in place, because once you go the way of democracy, then you open the door ajar, and what you have is a rat race to the bottom. Do you think that probably is maybe one of the reasons that is influencing the situation in Burkina Faso and in other West African countries where you have just too much diversity in those places?
Thank you. Interestingly, and also on this topic, I have written on. And I said something that it is because of that diversity that we need democracy. You see, me, as I sit here, apart from what happened in Senegal, where young people came together and overthrew a system that was well entrenched, and I've asked the French to leave their country. Apart from that happened in Senegal, I don't appreciate any other kind of government, seriously, because I cannot praise one military regime and criticize another. I cannot say that Yoweri Museveni is a dictator and then come and say that, well, for Tuari, he is the best. I won't do that. It will be contradictory, and it will not be a principled position to take. That's me as a person. It will not be good to say that, well, the coup in Guinea is good, but that one in Mali is bad. Yes, there are differences. There are different reasons. I don't want to subscribe to those arguments. And anybody who tells you that African state need dictatorship because of our differences, it's rather the opposite. We need democracy because of our differences. Now, This is the situation. In Ghana, I'm a Fanti. You are from, my brother, where are you from?
I'm a Dagati. I'm from Dagao. Yeah.
Good. Today, because of democracy, a Dagati is a Speaker of Parliament. We have a Fanti as Vice President. We have a Gonja as President. We have the Chief of Staff of the country being an Acham. We have, that is democracy. Different groups coming together. The reason why we need democracy is that then we can synchronize our aspirations in a more decent way. But where we have one leader who stays and we may never know when he is leaving, it always brings about animosity. It always brings about animosity. It brings about resentment because everybody has the right to lead a country. Give them the chance to go to the ballot. Let the people choose for themselves. So that argument, I've always said that when I hear people saying that Africa does not even need democracy and it's not, I find it disrespectful. And there is this word called Western democracy. I don't believe in Western democracy. There's nothing like Western democracy. Because even in Europe, the democracy practiced in Belgium is different from what is practiced in France. People don't know that. If you go to France, they practice the neo-presidential system. And that is what the Francophone countries have copied and they are suffering with it. If you move to UK, they practice the Westminster system, trying to marry modernity with traditional authority, where the prime minister is elected, but the royalty is left intact. If you move to Germany, they also practice the parliamentary system, but then the president is elected in parliament. But the head of government of the country is a chancellor. That is also different from what is practiced in Italy, because these are different constitutions. So when people say Western democracy, I don't believe in that. Now, my question I put to people is this. Do we allow only the Gatis to rule Ghana? Do we allow that? Do we allow only Fantis to rule Ghana? A Fanti man comes in and then they say, oh, he's so benevolent and he's all wise. There's nothing like that. There's nothing like all wise. Every human has his limitations. He must have limits. If we wanted to go monarchy, we can go monarchy. But in monarchy, who becomes the monarch? Is it my paramount chief in Abakrampa in Central Region? Or is it the Ochehine? Or is it the overlord of Gwanja land? Who is going to be the monarch if we are going monarchy? So the differences, the different political culture that we have traditionally means that we have to have constitutions that allow us to choose our leaders and change them over time. Because the issue of absolute power corrupting and absolute power corrupting absolutely is there. So you don't put one person there, no matter how good the person is, he is likely to become an albatross on the neck of the country over time. And that is one of my reasons. Many people refer to Rwanda. You know, before recently, people mention Paul Kagame and everybody's happy. But over time, as what is happening in Eastern DRC and other things, people are beginning to question Paul Kagame. Paul Kagame now wins over 95% and 98% of elections. And people are saying, oh man, come on. This is not realistic. People, at a point, people painted a picture like Rwanda is the most developed country in Africa. It is not true. Ghana is advanced than Rwanda. Rwanda depends heavily on foreign aid. These are things nobody wants to talk about. But as security analysts, we don't deal with ideologies too much. We don't deal with wishes. We deal with what is on the ground, the figures. Because when you use ideologies and wishes, it will come back splashing on your face. The analysis that you do will turn out not to be accurate. And that can undo you as a security analyst. So let's look at things in a more objective manner. So what I think is that the argument that some countries deserve dictatorship or strong men who know it all and others deserve some democracy in Africa, no. We were not part of those who discussed the partitioning of Africa in Berlin. But we happen to have different ethnicities in one political entity. We need a legal, rational system that regulates who leads and at what time, who gets what, when and how. The definition of politics as given by someone.
Well, if you have been listening to us or watching us, today, this is my view show here live on Today Ghana News TV, where today our guest is Mr. Fidel Amachi Usu, who is the CEO of DevSec Analytics Africa Limited. And we have been talking about the political leadership situation in Burkina Faso. We have tried to take a step back to build on, try to build on a history and the events that have happened to Burkina Faso that have led to where we are right now. So we'll take a short break so that Mr. Osu can take a sip of water. And then when we return, we are going to take some messages from our viewers and listeners. Then we move to the next phase of the conversation, which is to discuss the situation as it is right now, and maybe the future of the situation in Burkina Faso and its implications on the rest of the African continent. So don't go anywhere. Sit back and let's go for a break, and we'll be right back. Thank you very much.
Hallelujah. Enka osro hine. Ka apostle Stephen Amuakuhu okwantrofo penyi ene kofabaye edema Inner World of God Ministry International ewa biblical truth miminda ediye nimi ene miminda bia abra abo enumre nonso Ghana time yeyini life ewa Today Ghana News TV biblical truths power.
Don't miss a beat, stay tuned tight. The best of the best, shining bright. Tune in now, it's not a game. Today Ghana News, it's your clan. Tie with Francis, a unique delight. Don't miss the magic, shining bright. Tune in and see the best of the best. Today Ghana News, you'll be impressed. And every week, a new adventure. Francis Jalil, we're ready. From the beach to the dance floor. Don't miss a beat, stay tuned.
Welcome back to my view show here live on Today Ghana News TV. We're also broadcasting live on Sakina Information Center in Tatali, in High FM at 93.7 in Achuihimai in the Eastern region, and on OT TV in Jasikai, on the King's Radio in Accra, and I think Adelema TV or radio, then also across all social media platforms as my view show on Today Ghana News TV. Today, our guests have been Mr. Fidel Amachi Usu, who is the CEO of DevSec Analytics Africa Limited, which is a security and risk consultancy based in Ghana, but have been working all across Africa. So let's take a few comments from our viewers and listeners. NDC Diaspora Union, you say, good show. African leaders should learn and listen to the young man in Burkina Faso you are watching from Amsterdam in Holland. Thank you very much, NDC Diaspora Union. Asempa Heneboachi, you say, greetings, my knowledgeable comrades. You are watching and listening from Achuihimai. Then we also have Frimpong Bafi. Frimpong, you say good evening, and you are watching from Akuse near Somenya. Mr. Fidel is a top-notch security analyst. God bless him. God bless you too, Frimpong, for doing the watching. Mavis Boating, you say very eloquent and thoughtful response from the guest. Good job today, Ghana News TV. You are watching from Lisbon in Portugal. Jaframa TV, you say, good evening, today Ghana News TV. Was he named after the late great Cuban leader? You are greeting from Rara in Oti region. Thank you very much, Jaframa TV, for doing the watching. Kweku Ivo, you say, wow, this is a wealth political experience. Please kindly ask him if he is in touch with the wife of the former Vice President, Mr. Atta. You are watching from Sukhum in the Eastern region. Thank you very much, Kweku Ivo, for doing the watching. Lady Mal _2, you say, good evening, my friends. Please ask him if the Russian influence in the Sahel is sustainable. You are watching from St. Petersburg in Russia. Thank you very much, Lady Mal. Sekapa TV, you are watching from Jumaponia Kofredia. It's an eye-opening discussion. Thank you very much, Sekapa TV, for doing, Sekapa family for doing the watching. Kwesi Insia, please ask him why is Benin not featuring prominently in the French geopolitics. Is it because they do not have gold or oil? You are watching from Anglo Town in Kofredia. Thank you very much, Kwesi, for doing the watching. Nanata from good evening from Tatali, Northern Ghana, and Sakina Information Center listeners. Good evening to you, Nanata from. Robert Kimpe, you say you are watching from Paris, France. Great show. Thank you very much, Robert, for always joining us on the show. Patience Daku, good evening, you say, and you are watching from Hamburg, Germany. Watching attentively. Ghana Infie, powerful show. You are watching from Bosuso in Frontier South District. Thank you very much, Ghana Infie, for doing the watching. And for all those who are doing the watching and listening, thank you very much for joining us. We are grateful for your time. And we are joined back by Mr. Owusu to continue with the second segment of the show. Welcome back, Mr. Owusu.
Thanks for having me, sir.
Yes. So before we went on a break, we had taken a look at the situation in Burkina Faso, and you had given your strong leanings for the argument for democracy and why Africans should not probably own dictatorship as their birthright and stand for it or claim it, as to say, and give various excuses as to why democracy would not work on the continent. Now, be that as it may, on the African continent a few years ago, a young gentleman, I think he's now 36 or 37, Captain Traore, sprang onto the political, atmosphere in West Africa, in Burkina Faso in particular, when he overthrew the military government at the time and took over the reins of that country. Ever since, there seemed to be some kind of euphoria building around him, especially among the youth. Some people say that this state of affairs, or the reflection that the young people in the continent have about him, is as a result of some kind of disillusionment or despondency that these people, the young people, have had on democracy on the African continent. That is to say that people have just not seen the dividend of democracy that they have been promised, and that this is leading credence to this young gentleman who is seen, as I said in the earlier half of the show, as the reincarnate of of the assassinated military ruler in times past. Do you think that this opinion that democracy has not yielded its dividends is the reason for the euphoria that's been building around the young leader in Burkina Faso?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Before I even start with this, Captain Touare is unique in one particular way.
Okay.
Is the fact that unlike Assimi Goïta of Mali, the Colonel Assimi Goïta of Mali, and General Abdurrahman Chiani of Niger,
okay,
Captain Touare did not overthrow a democracy. He did not overthrow any constitution. He overthrew military regime that had overthrown a constitution.
Okay.
So his coup in September 2022 was staged to overthrow a group of colonels who were in charge and who had overthrown the democracy that was put in place after the exit of Blaise Compaoré. So that makes Touare unique in the group of AES states or the Sahel states. That is very important so that you can understand when I'm proceeding with the explanation I'm going to give.
Okay.
Now, with that difference, now we come to the euphoria. I have some friends who have reached out and asked me, Fidel, I mean, everybody's talking about Touare, praising him. Why? We've not seen that on your page. We've not seen that. And I said, well, I see things differently, a little differently. The reason is that I think that the young man means well. I mean, who doesn't like Sankara? Who doesn't want to be Sankara? I would like to be Sankara. And perhaps you sitting there would like to be Sankara because he was original and he meant well. So in the conclusion, he means well.
Okay.
But what led to the coup that he staged? That is what will let us analyze whether this is euphoria, whether it is exaggerated, and whether the facts are being put before us. Now, the reason why Touare staged his coup, and in fact, the September coup in 2022 resulted in a standoff. It means the coup was not an easy coup. He did not have an easy ride to power. When he staged the coup, the junta that was in office countered the coup, and it was going to lead to a bloodshed. So it was a negotiation that led to the success of the coup. It means after negotiating, the reigning colonels felt that, oh well, things are not going to. If we pursue this, there's going to be bloodshed. So we would like to go on exile. So Togo came in, and the leader then went on an exile in Togo, and Touare took over. But what reasons was he given? The reason Touare gave was that terrorists, extremists, jihadists were taking territory in Burkina Faso, and him and his like ranks are suffering the brunt of the terrorists. The soldiers that they are leading on the front line were dying, and the colonels were in Ouagadougou doing nothing about it. And that was one of the main reasons Touare staged the September 2022 coup. A major factor. So he was saying that we have become cannon fodder for the regime because we are at the front line. We don't have equipment, we don't have anything, and the terrorists are killing us by the day. And it was true. Burkina Faso soldiers were serious casualties in these clashes. The extremists were making gains. And so he had a point in taking over because he felt that the colonels did not care and he had his way. Now, to the current question of whether what is happening is euphoria or it is real. One thing is that democracy, despite all its good sides, has had some bad sides because some people are overly corrupt, take advantage of the democratic system to loot with no accountability. Some people hide behind constitutions to suppress the masses. Sometimes they do. But at the time that the colonels overthrew the democracy in Burkina Faso, there was nothing like people suppressing people. It was running. After the exit of Campari, that democracy was running. So for me, the early 2022 coup that overthrew the constitution was needless to me. The same with Mali and Niger. I didn't see where one person was overly powerful in that country and using the constitution to have his way. I didn't see that in these countries. Unlike what we see in Cote d'Ivoire currently, where Ouattara is using his influence to change constitutions, disqualify people from running. No, that was not happening in these three countries in the Sahel. So the 2022, the first coup in 2022 was not necessary. That was so, and when Touareg overthrew these guys, in fact, they deserved it because they had overthrown the constitution. However, the question is that currently, how is the extremist situation in Burkina Faso? That is the big question to answer today. And the answer is, as a security analyst who reports on that country, is worse than when Touareg came to office.
Well, actually, that was going to be my next question to you, because
yes,
there are reports that currently the country is being, terrorist government control just about a third of the country, and that the rest of the country is being, controlled by bandits. Is that your understanding of the situation?
No, it's not about understanding. It's about the fact that after Touareg took over, the terror situation in Burkina Faso is worse. It's a fact.
Okay.
Now, in the last 4 weeks, more than 200 Burkinabe soldiers have been killed in the last 4 weeks. 200. And these jihadists are expanding. They call them the JNIM. And that is the JNIM, the initial is in Arabic, and it means protectors of Islam and Muslims. This group was created in 2016-2017, made up of a group of Al-Qaeda affiliates that form a federation. And in Mali, and currently, they are moving ferociously. There's also what you call IS, Islamic State in the Greater Sahel, also functioning or operating in the southeast of Burkina Faso. And then, especially in the three border regions in the north, where the borders between Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso meets, it's a no-go area. And the soldiers are dying. To the extent that at some point, even when these attacks happen, governments try to suppress it. I mean, in announcing some of these things. Now, the question is, Fidel, you are in Ghana. How did you know this? I cannot disclose how I operate as a security person, but these are reliable information. Take it from me. And despite, sometimes when things go out of the media and it is reported by maybe CNN or DW, as Africans, we don't want the story to be told by outsiders. So we have a way to call them Western propaganda. The reality is that Burkinabe soldiers who are Africans are dying at a faster rate, and the situation is becoming helpless. The reason why, as a security analyst, I'm saying this is that I report for NGOs, some agencies that work in Burkina Faso. And in that report, you cannot write wishes. You cannot say, well, I have to write for Touareg to look good because the guy is emulating Sankara. So I have to write for him to look good. No, you have to write a fact. Because if you write the wrong thing, you are going to lose your job. I mean, you are not going to, the contract will end because you are trying to polish things. No, in security, you write what is actually happening. And so far, it is not good. It is not good. Now, that means that the reason that Mr. Touareg used in overthrowing his seniors, someone else can use the same reason to move against him. That is something that I think that listeners should take note of. When it comes to security, and as I've mentioned, there's nothing like black and white. This person is all good and that person is all bad. There's nothing like that. You look at it objectively, and that is what is happening. Soldiers are dying. The other thing is this. Now, with the young people who are happy about this young man, is the fact that he has implemented certain policies. Let the factory run. Let's build a factory for this. Things that, I mean, import substitution. If you look at his policy, like what Kwame Nkrumah did earlier, import substitution. And this sounds well because in many African countries, the youth wants jobs. So when they see the young man in Burkina Faso doing that, they identify that, well, this guy is 37. And majority of African youth are about his age and below. So they feel that this is a guy who understands how we feel. And that's why he's doing what he's doing. It does not necessarily mean that Traoré has created jobs and the job situation in Burkina Faso is perfect. No. That's not what it means. He has made effort. And because sometimes I see a lot of exaggerations. The last time I saw a video where Traoré was supposed to be flying and Russian jets were escorting him from Burkina Faso to Russia. I mean, this were all propaganda. It's never true. You know, when you see videos like that, because what made me see even the video, I saw it even before I verified it. I saw it, and then I saw that the jet that was escorting the supposed plane was F-35. F-35 is never owned by Russia; it's owned by the US. And I saw it by its frame. You know, these are things that we study to notice. And so some of these things happen, and because of such exaggeration, sometimes it's difficult to decipher facts from propaganda. And every government engage in propaganda. And the young man also has supporters who wants to also, shore him up. But if you want to engage in objective analysis, you have to read in between the lines and see where the exaggeration is and all that. Again, the demography. Many African youths did not experience the coups of the 70s and the 80s. They did not experience its excesses or their excesses. And so there's this excitement that those days were better days. Not every leader, not every coup leader was Sankara, or maybe let's say Jerry Rawlings. And even with Jerry Rawlings and Sankara, some people still have issues against them. You are likely to have, all that happening. So there's that euphoria. Many people feel that, well, if I'm in Nigeria and I feel that the president, Tinubu, is too old, and I look at what is happening in Burkina Faso, I say, well, maybe it's better. But my brother, Nigeria is safer than Burkina Faso as we speak. That is the fact. The situation is that Ghana is safer than Burkina Faso. The situation is that Ghana is developed than Burkina Faso. The situation is that Ghana has more infrastructure development going on than Burkina Faso. That is the fact.
Well,
yes.
Let's push back a little.
Yeah, okay.
There is the claim that most of these reports that are coming out from mostly humanitarian organizations or NGOs that report on events or happenings in Burkina Faso, that most often than not downplay the direction that the country is going. Are just Western puppets that are there to paint a certain picture so that a certain they can give the dog a bad name and they hang it. So that if today or tomorrow some other person goes into Burkina Faso trying to remedy the situation, the person will be justified because the narrative would have been out there that there's a lot of things that are going on under the radar that are being covered up by this by this gentleman.
Okay.
Is that not the situation?
So firstly, I don't buy into those things. Mostly these are conspiracy theories. And again, in security, you don't pay attention to this because then you feel in your when you do the analysis, you go to the ground and you check the ground, you see that is actually what is happening. Now, my question is, those days when Captain Traoré staged the coup against his seniors, and he was mentioned that they were dying on the front line, and we were also receiving the same report. We were writing the same report. Who was giving the report? Or how were we getting the answers? Those media, the news in the media, how did that, at that time, the French were still in the country, but the news was still coming out that things were getting bad in Burkina Faso. The French were there when things were getting worse. They were there. So who was then producing that? Sometimes as Africans, I see sometimes we get carried away too fast with some of these information, how things are twisted. When we see that something is good, we think that something is good, we think that it is all good. And that is where professionals, academics, and other experts must stay away from. Don't, you look, as I said, he means well for his country, but things are not that rosy as they are painted. Burkina Faso is threatened in terms of its security, is highly threatened. And in fact, the gentleman himself has not denied this. So sometimes I get a little, he has not denied it. And recently, when Ghana was there, Ghana representatives were there, he mentioned that he wants collaboration to fight terrorism. These are, I mean, fact. So yes, there will be that kind of support that people will grant him and other things. But the reality is that the situation in Burkina Faso is getting really bad. The soldiers are dying on the front line. They are using IEDs. They are using IEDs. In fact, at some point, terrorists are getting used to improvise UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, and arming them to attack soldiers. These are very serious issues. Yeah.
Well, the other point, the other pushback would be that there seem to be a groundswell of Western interest in Burkina Faso all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Previously, nobody really heard about Burkina Faso. It was well, not a small country, but in terms of the size of its economy, relatively small, always languishing down there as the poorest among the world's poorest countries, and nobody took interest in Burkina Faso. But all of a sudden, there seemed to be a lot of interest from the West about what is happening in Burkina Faso. People were dying then, but they seem not to have been interested. So the question is, why all of a sudden? Why are they interested in Burkina Faso all of a sudden when they were not previously?
I don't know. Did you hear of Operation Seval? Operation Seval. Have you heard something like that?
No, educate me.
Okay. So in 2012, 2013, when jihadists were trying to overrun Sahel states in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, France led Operation Seval, backed by West African forces. At the time, Ouattara was ECOWAS chairman, and within a few months, President Mahama, the current president of Ghana at the time in his first term, became the chairman. So he supervised actually the deployment of forces, and those forces were led by the French. So and sometimes I think that as professionals, we have followed the issue. So we find it difficult when they say the West has not shown interest in Burkina Faso. No, they have always shown, because the country has resources. It has a lot of things that they can benefit from. So they have always shown. In fact, why did France let Burkina Faso remain in the French community and not grant it total independence? Because of resources, and they know it. They signed those deals where Francophone countries had to leave their reserves in Paris and other things because of those same interests. So to say that the Europeans have never shown interest until recently, that is a pure fallacy. It is not true. It's just that today, the support for Touareg is very high, and that kind of thing. He's defying, and everybody will want to back a defiant leader. For instance, someone asked a question about Fidel Castro. Yes, I was named after him. My father was actually part of the PNDC revolution in the 1980s. He was a member of the Committee for the Defense of the Revolution. My father was a member, and he named me after Fidel Castro. Yes, but this is not the point I want to make. The point I want to make is that Fidel Castro was loved by many people who love democracy. Even though he was not practicing that kind of democracy in Cuba, he was more of a strongman. People love him. Why? Because he could stand up to the United States. So when you meet a young person standing up to, a power like France, people will back him. But in doing so, we must not delve so much into exaggerations and things that are not. France has always shown interest in the Sahel states, because even in the last decades, they've seen that there is gold, uranium in Niger, gold in Burkina Faso, gold in Mali, and other places. So they have always shown interest. It's just that now, because of Touareg, it has become more, and people who don't even pay attention to security issues, geopolitics, are now paying attention. That's why it seems so, but they have always shown interest. Yes. Yes.
Well. Yes, they've always shown interest,
Yes.
but there is a counter narrative that the situation of Burkina Faso is such that if the West does not quell this, that it could lead to a situation whereby it festers as an environment for military, takeovers all across the African continent. Because if a positive narrative is painted of a military junta, what that means is that other countries that are not happy with their situation and their democratic situation may well encourage that and not mind that. And the other narrative is that Traore seems to be defying capitalism in the Western form, in the Western form of it, as in the way he goes about the award of contracts and all of those things, encouraging community engagements, and then in the process awarding, getting young people who probably would not have been employed, especially in rural areas, and that to the extent that poverty in the periphery seem to have been the ingredient that the bandits are they are feeding on to recruit people to join their force. To the extent that he seemed to be devising this means where he's using community engagement to capture young people to the full and to help in the development, building of roads and what have you. That if that narrative is allowed to continue, it brings another, if you like, Cuba situation, Russia situation, where we are now flirting with socialism and governance of that nature. What do you make of this?
Yes. I have answers to all this, but the time is really running. So, yes, I have answers to all this. Firstly, that we are going to talk about the ECOWAS protocol on good governance and democracy, which has now led to the schism in the region, where the group of Sahel states are breaking away from ECOWAS or have broken away from ECOWAS. We have to talk about that maybe another time, and then we also have to talk about the issue of having rippling effect, that if Traore come to Ghana and as a young man he's showing his military fatigue with holding his pistol and all that, is it going to let the youth fall in love with coup makers and things like that? People have raised such questions. I think these are topics for another day to discuss, and I'll wrap up by saying that currently the situation in Burkina Faso is a serious one. The young man means well, and I think that ECOWAS, despite the differences they have with the Sahel state, in terms of security, they should separate politics from security. They should come together and help solve the security problems. I am not necessarily advocating external actors to come solve the security situation in Burkina Faso. Ask him to bring him inside. Sorry about that. Yes. So ECOWAS needs to work together, despite the differences, the political differences, need to work together on the security front to help tackle the terrorism. Because, as I said, now the Sahel is the epicenter of global terrorism. In 2000, we heard of Afghanistan, we heard of Yemen, Syria. Today, the epicenter of global terrorism is in the Sahel. That means many Africans are suffering. And so it goes beyond a single personality, Traore. It has ramifications for populations, occupations. Women and children are being targeted by these terrorists, this heartless cowards who target soft. Apart from killing soldiers, they also target soft. They also target soft targets and maim and kill people. So thank you so much for today, and I'm sorry it must end here. I wish to fix another time for the subsequent questions you ask. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for joining us on the show. We are grateful for your time, and thank you for the education that you have, your enlightenment that you have brought to the topic at hand. Listeners and viewers, if you are just joining us, this is MyView show here live on Today Ghana News TV, where this evening we have been looking at the political leadership in Burkina Faso and its influence on the African continent. We were joined today by Mr. Fidel Amachi Osu, who is the CEO of DevSec Analytics Africa Limited, which is a security and a risk consultancy based in Ghana, and who helped us to understand the topic for discussion today. As you can see, we would have loved to have continued with this discussion. We have actually gone way beyond our time, but that tells you that there is a lot more to talk about. And on another day, we will do well to bring Mr. Fidel back on the show so that we can go into other areas of this topic. Like I said at the beginning of the show, this is important to us because we are very much intertwined with the people of Burkina Faso and other West African countries. And so the events that are happening there are of interest to us and things that we should take keen interest in. So make time to bring Mr. Fidel back so that we can have another discussion on the show. But before we do that, or until we do that, we will say thank you to you for staying tuned to Today Ghana News TV and to MyView show. And we will do well next week to bring you yet another interesting topic for discussion. So until then, until next week, we say God bless you. God bless Ghana. Stay safe. Good night.
The country where I come from, the truth is irony. Just like animal farm, justice mean inequity. So who go say the truth? Who go say the truth? Christian can say silence, Islamic leaders silence, kings and queens silence.